college sports. All right, here we go. This is Olin Buchanan asking Jim Schlossnagle earlier today at his press conference that introduced him in Austin, and it's about 2.5, 3 minutes of audio. From Parker Ream, by the way. We appreciate him for sharing the video.
Coach Schlossnagle, Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com.
Welcome.
Thank you. Coach, on Monday night, you said that you went to Texas A&M with the idea of it being a last job, and then you said that your mind hadn't changed beyond that. So, number one, what changed? And then number two, what would you say to those Texas A&M people that supported you that feels like that you intentionally misled them?
Well, I didn't intentionally mislead them. And that's a very fair question for you to ask because that is what I said. In that moment, that's exactly how I felt. At 50 years old, you got to understand, and Chris would probably back me up on this, I love TCU. My children grew up there, Fort Worth. I was there 18 years, and it had to be a very unique situation for me to leave that at 50 years old. I love Coach Garrido, but I hope I get to coach here for a long time, but I don't really have any plans on coaching to 75, 78 years old. So I made that choice because it aligned both personally and professionally with what I had going on at the time. And I loved it. And I dove in with every single ounce of me to help A&M have the very best baseball program it can possibly have. And that investment lasted through the last pitch of the national championship game. It never wavered, not 1 second. I don't care what anybody says. As Chris likes to say, we have jobs and try to run a business on other people's passion. And if I had left Texas A&M for some other school in a different part of the country, the interesting text messages and messages that I got yesterday probably wouldn't have happened. But I get it. You can't ask for your fan base to support you and be passionate like the 12th man always has been, but really was this year. Our crowds were awesome. Awesome, every single game. And so you can't ask for that like I did and our staff did and then expect everybody to be okay with a coach leaving for its rival school. And I get it, and I get it. All I can say is I have a career too. I have a personal life as well. That I have goals, and I just simply felt like no negative at A&M, just the positives of the alignment, and frankly, my relationship with Chris. That I knew there wasn't anybody at Texas A&M that I couldn't trust. I just know that I can trust Chris. I just know that. And as hard as that decision was, I could not walk away from it.
I think in this instance, two things can be true in that he's absolutely leaving and going to another job happens all the time. Going to rivals happens all throughout sports. It happens all the time. I think the difference here is, and yes, he certainly, they were right there to the last pitch. They were invested. It's amazing that they were able to keep their focus and all this, but pretending like this happened over 12 hours after they lost the game and came back to College Station, I think is total BS. I think this has been in the works for a while. The whole coaching staff, the play, all those things, that's been in the works for a while. So to say that this just came up, I think is disingenuous.
Craig?
Yeah, I have no dog in the fight. I mean, this move doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. It's just a very interesting story from my perspective, right? I don't have ties to Texas, don't have ties to A&M, don't care who their coaches are. It's a situation where it's just been interesting as a complete outside observer to just see all this unfold. And just, the Lincoln Riley thing when Oklahoma was going through that was a messy deal. So I kind of, know what that's like of a guy kind of having one foot out the door. And clearly, Lincoln Riley didn't just, after Oklahoma season wrapped up, it's like, oh, USC just happened to call. And it came together so quickly and all of that. So I kind of know the feeling in a way, although this is just much more dastardly because of where he's going, right? Like, that's the thing, is like he says there, if he was going to fill the South Carolina job, A&M fans would still be pissed off, but not to the extent that they are because of where he's going in reality. So I don't know. I have a hard time believing anything the guy says. I had that with a lot of college coaches, if not most, if not all college coaches at this point, coaches in general, pro coaches. So I just kind of listen, and I'm just thankful that I don't have to make big decisions based on what they're saying, because I don't believe, hardly any of it. I do think he makes some valid points as far as his life and his career, and that's all very real and understandable, and clearly he has a very close relationship with Chris Del Conte. So, yeah, all that makes sense. I just think that the way it was handled was poor, the going at the reporter, and I know we'll address that in a moment and everything, but, I mean, this is college sports. This is college big business. This isn't new. It's just a very fresh and juicy chapter that is pretty fascinating because of the timing of it all and the schools involved. So, I don't know if you want me to say, like, I believe him. Like, I don't. No. I just, I understand where he's coming from. I don't believe half of what he's saying. I definitely don't believe that this was something that just came together. All the stuff we've been reading over the last 24 hours. I know there's a lot of hurt A&M fans, so I don't take everything being said as fact either. But it does seem like there's enough fingers pointing to some certain things that, like, yeah, he was not all in all the time with Texas A&M during the last leg of their journey. It's amazing they still were able to get as far as they did, given how much his mind might have been elsewhere at times. I do think he invested, in his opinion, all that he had towards A&M, but I don't think you gave it every single bit of you when you very clearly were orchestrating a massive move behind the scenes, and that was not something that just came together by the sounds of it. And in the end, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how he did it. So, in the long run, who cares? A&M fans care. I get that, and they deserve to care and be very upset. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, it doesn't even really matter what he says or how it happened. He made the move, and, for A&M fans, I guess those things do matter. But from my standpoint, yeah, it feels very greasy. It's an all-time historic coup for Chris Del Conte and the University of Texas. It will make an excellent chapter and anecdote in future books about rivalries, and it will be an all-time folk tale in college football circles when it comes to the crazy things that we've heard over the years, from coaching choices to recruiting stories. Like, this is a new entry that will be in the all-time collection of college football folk tales, right? So it's fascinating, but yeah, it does feel a little bit dirty. Then again, college football, college athletics is a dirty business, and I think we're just getting a reminder of that. But yeah, what a coup for Texas. What a loss for A&M, and I totally get Aggies being pissed off, and I'm sure we will hear far more about how exactly this unfolded, because I don't think the tale that he's trying to spin as far as that goes really holds any weight.
Coaches will always say they're not going to take a job, it seems like to me, and when they do, you shouldn't believe them, because we've seen enough evidence. Also, he's not the first coach that will leave a program and be with somebody else the next day. Remember what Art Briles did when he left Houston, and others, and Schlossnagle when he left TCU for Texas A&M. It's going to happen. So that's not really the outrage. To me, isn't it, am I right, the movie Batman? Is it the Joker that's walking down the street and buildings and cars as he walks by are exploding? Yeah. That scene? That's what he has. Schlossnagle, it seemed like he's done to Texas A&M baseball. Lavalette, Grahovic, Jack Bell, Caden Kent, and Max Koffer have all entered the portal, and there'll be more.
As has Caden Sorrell and Jet Johnson.
Okay. Well, there's 8 to 10 players, at least 8 players.
And there are
now there's some A&M pitchers who are saying they're not going anywhere and that they're staying at A&M. And so this is a moving target, so to speak. But Jace Lavalette had just posted about it 24 hours ago about, hey, if you're in the portal, this is a great place to be. He's also a college kid. I know things change. If a coach can change his mind, so can a player. But that's what it reminds me of right now. Just not leaving a program, but there's explosions as you're walking down the street, leaving a house or a neighborhood.
That was actually the Dark Knight.
Okay, the Dark Knight.
Heath Ledger, just want to clarify there. Yeah, you're right, though. It was Batman, and yeah, he's leaving the hospital, and he's trying to set off the bombs, and it's not working, and then he toys around with it, and it finally all explodes, and he takes off.
So but that's my analogy.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. He's just, setting everything on fire as he leaves, their roster, the emotions of fans, and really this past season. I know I've seen, and for Aggie fans, I totally get it. You're trying to play this as positively as you probably can, trying to take something good from it. They will always have this past baseball season, but I just can't imagine it doesn't always forever feel tarnished. One, because it fell short. I mean, ultimately, you don't remember the non-championship seasons as much as you remember the ones that you won the title, obviously. Now, for some programs, and their run was so great, that this will have plenty of memories, and this will be something that, from time to time, I'm sure A&M fans will look back on, but it's just not going to be anywhere close to the same that it was when he was still their head coach, coming back and building off of this, as opposed to leaving them before that game was even over. Just unofficially, and then officially being introduced, less than 48 hours after that loss? He's already in Austin being introduced with his staff in tow. So, and then, 10 players, whatever the total number is now in the portal, and A&M now being – so, that whole celebration this past season for the players and the parents and the hardcore fans, I totally get that, but you can't not have a sour taste in your mouth when looking back on this now. I don't see how that's possible.
And look, he takes – the other thing it sucks for A&M is that it's not like he's taken away like a couple guys. It's the heart of their lineup for next year.
Yeah, the ones who are not going to get drafted here.
It's not like Braden Montgomery, he was losing him anyway, right? But it's also Laviolette, Kent, and Grahovic, they're going to be, and Sorrell, that's the four guys you're going to build that lineup around after you lost the guys from the draft last year, or from this season. So that really stings hard. I do think, and I talked about this on the triple option earlier, it is it's funny how different schools respond to things certain ways, and A&M always likes to blame the coach, all the time. That's kind of what they do. Texas, when these things happen, but I don't know why. We don't really have anything to do with this. It's just kind of a natural occurrence. And all of a sudden, it's like he didn't know that David Pierce David Pierce gets fired. You're there. All this happened. And then they're pretending this happened in 12 hours. It's
hard to explain that your entire staff and you are leaving the next day after you arrive back from a College World Series championship.
The thing is that everybody's going to be mad anyway if you're just yes, Chris Del Conte is my best friend. And when he floated out to me the idea of us working together again, it was in my mind. We were in the College World Series final. Clearly I was present, enough to get them there. It wasn't like he was making ridiculous decisions hey, I'm gonna pull Laviolette in this inning.
The left fielder's gonna pitch next inning.
It's not
he wasn't doing that. No.
But when you hear all these things about from the Texas side of maybe he wasn't treated as well, or they didn't do this. They just made an $80 million commitment to baseball. So even though there might have been some pushback, what are we talking about here when it comes to that? And two, all right, well, maybe if the new AD kind of felt that you had one foot out the door because everybody knew that Schloss was going to go or Pierce was going to get fired, maybe you did have an icy relationship.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Go ahead. You've got a couple more notes to get to, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just a fascinating thing. I do think that he gave his all in his mind. He didn't make poor decisions like Paul said. He tried to win them a championship. I just think that you can't say you were 100% all in when you were very clearly talking about another job towards the end and maneuvering and making moves very quietly to make this happen as soon as you possibly could, as soon as the season was over with. But for Texas, it's an all-time get. It's a huge move. It's a cold, calculated blow to your rival that I don't know how they recover from it, quite frankly, other than beating you later this football season. That's about the only way anytime soon that I can think of feeling like you're getting any sort of get back on them. And, I applaud the cold, calculated nature of Del Conte. In this shark-filled pool of college sports, they've got a great white right now at athletic director.
They absolutely, he's
he just took
strings.
a huge bite out of their rivals and left them reeling. And so, I see why it's celebrated from the Texas standpoint. But from the A&M standpoint, it's very easy to see, why they are so upset, and rightfully so. They feel like they were lied to, or at least led astray, misled, I guess is the better word for it. And I'm very curious as to how they pivot and make their next move. I do want to ask this, though. So if you're Jim Schlossnagle the other night and Richard Zane, that's the reporter's name, correct?
Right.
So he already knew he was gone. Like, that's very clear. He already knew that he was leaving. That's why he got so defensive, because somebody actually asked him about it. What could he have done differently in addressing that question that would have made it any better? Like, people are pissed that he was doing that press conference and he got on the reporter and then he stormed out like he was doing something, when in reality he stormed off because he was upset that he got called out for what clearly was about to happen. But, like, what in the end could Jim Schlossnagle have done, starting with that post-game press conference, to handle this any better than he did?
Great question. Let's put this up. This is, first of all, what Schlossnagle said today when he addressed the Richard Zane back and forth. Schlossnagle publicly apologizes to Richard Zane, who's from Texas. I wish I could have answered that better, then follows that up by saying he was only thinking about his players during that moment and could not think about anything else. So that's what he said today. Olin was there, and so was Cedric Golden. We'll have them on here in the next couple of hours.
I think there's only one way to do this is all talk about anything else is for another day.
Yeah.
Right now I gotta go back in the clubhouse and talk to my guys and, deal with this because it's heartbreaking. And then go, if that's all that I can go. And then you can go like, well, I kind of think that's our answer, is that he's considering it. But as opposed to like, I left my family.
Yeah.
Like he just ran out, the door and was like, listen, I'm sorry, son. We'll play catch another day. Like, that stuff was, and look, I know he apologized, but that's why it was so bad, because you're like, all right, so you dressed this guy down, and then if he was really staying, this is the last job I ever wanted to take, and then the next morning you get up and take it, and then pretend like, Chris texted me, and I was like, you know what? Yeah. No, that's not how it happened.
Well, one of the other things, and Craig, you follow, please, is that, and when we have Olin on, we'll ask him this, is that it was almost an underlying current after this started to steam up on Monday, an underlying current that this was something that was known and even discussed as a possibility on, and that some staff on Texags, and again, it's undercurrent, may have kind of known this was happening, and I'm not sure if they didn't report it because they didn't want to interrupt a great thing or what, and some of them are being called out for that when they say there's so much more to come out of all this. Now, again, whatever you see on social media doesn't mean it's true. A lot of accusations.
Well, people are angry, so they're just going to get angry at everybody they can. So, now it's the reporters because they didn't report it a day earlier or whatever. Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know about what people knew and what they didn't know. I understand fans lash out, though, and I've experienced that. All of a sudden the team start losing. Somehow it's my fault. Like, that I didn't ask Dave Aranda why he didn't call this defense in this moment. It's like, y'all don't understand how this works, do you? Because that's not how it works. But, I think that sounds like it was probably misplaced anger. And then again, if some people did know, which it does sound like some people did know, or they're trying to portray themselves in a certain light after the fact, is like, oh, see, kind of like, oh, well, I knew about that. I just couldn't say anything. Like, I guess you're trying to get that attention maybe. I don't know. I don't relate to that. But I've definitely seen people, kind of pull that before with things. If that was the case, then I can see being like, well, why didn't you say something? And I don't know, maybe it goes so far as you are a fan more than you're a reporter, and you don't want to disrupt this thing. Or even if you're not a fan, you just aren't sure enough to throw something that's a bomb out there right before this massive game's about to take place. So, without knowing the details, it's hard to say who handled it right or wrong, but there definitely seemed to be some rumblings prior to the game being played.
There were Aggie fans who were furious with Richard Zane for asking a question that we talked about this. He had the balls to ask the question. He is one that actually finally uncovered what may have been already out there, or at least was being discussed. So, Dundee's, he could have said next question. Someone else, he could have said no comment, and he would have been skewered for that too. But when he said that Richard Zane was being selfish, when he himself knew he was on his way out the door, that kind of made it look like he himself might have just gotten caught and he did not know how to react to it. In the end, it's a coach leaving. It's a rivalry. It's big. But in the end, another coach will leave for somewhere to go to A&M. And it's not like A&M hasn't talked to coaches who they've hired, perhaps before they're done at the job where they are at a specific time.
I'll just tell you, I don't think Jimbo Fisher woke up on a December morning and said, F this Christmas tree. I think that was in the works for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's it kind of has to be that way. But, you can't just pretend like this was a, kind of happenstance thing.
Well, it doesn't matter at this point. He's gone. He's left. He's done it before with the TCU to Texas A&M move or something like this, and many other coaches have as well. So it's not unique to him. It's just very interesting because it's the latest example of it. And that's why I asked the question about what else could he say, because anything else he would have said was going to tip it off anyways. No comment would have been better because at least you avoid the blaming of a young reporter for asking a question that everybody else clearly was probably want to know the answer to. So, yeah, I think that would have been a tip-off, but we were all going to learn about it in hours anyway.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Like, you avoid the whole attacking the reporter thing. And of all things to say, and then I know we'll move on from, Schloss and all of that, but to call that kid selfish when you were making the most selfish move in the entire ordeal is just something, man. That's just, I know he's self-aware, but that's a narcissist ego thing that I just can't relate to, man. But yeah, like to sit there and just publicly dress down a guy asking his question and to call that guy selfish when you're about to, in less than a few hours, make an incredibly selfish move that I don't fault him for, mind you. It's his career, it's his life. Like, be selfish, but to call someone else that and then to turn around and do what you did, it's just like, come on, dude.
I think that's why he knew, and he had to apologize. And Olin being there, who Schlossnagle kind of recognized at the press conference, so I'm sure they have a pretty good relationship. That's what will be fun to talk to him at 5:25. I just saw this note. I don't even know why it popped up. Ryan Schwartz, due to the recent coaching changes at the University of Texas, I have decided to request the release of my NLI and open up my recruitment to all schools interested. He's a catcher, pitcher, outfielder, whatever, I believe in North Carolina. So there's a little bit of that both back and forth, and there's probably going to be some players, if these transfers end up in Austin, which it probably will, that may not might be say, hey, by the way, you might want to look elsewhere. It's going to be a churning, like whatever you see in the washer or in the dryer.
We saw this with Kalen DeBoer leaving Washington. I mean, name a move. It's all we've seen it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's the same thing.
Fish to Washington after DeBoer went to Alabama. We saw all the tweets. Thank you very much, Jack. Great stuff by putting all that up. So that will be interesting to see how many of those players in the portal, and you would think the timing means they're about to be signing at some point or committing to the University of Texas at some point pretty soon. Now, there's a couple of notes